Well, welcome back to Lucore Automotive. If you've already subscribed, we appreciate it. Welcome back. If you hadn't subscribed, smash that subscribe button. We're trying to grow this channel as fast as we possibly can so we can put more of our content out there for you guys. Anyway, as we've talked in a lot of previous videos, we do pretty much everything here. From hot rods and race cars, muscle cars, lifted trucks, lowered vehicles, imports, tuner cars, diesel trucks, work trucks. In this case, it's a diesel work truck. This one is a 6.6-liter diesel. It's a Ford product, great work truck. Unfortunately, this one has a little bit of an injector issue, as you'll see. Rich is going to walk you through the entire process here to get this guy back up and running. By the end of it, I think we'll be happy with the process. Let's go.
So you can see we definitely have number 6 and number 8 cylinders down. Those cylinders right next to each other. So we're going to pull the valve cover. We're going to look for high pressure oil leaks in the H-pop oil rail on top of the valve train on the driver's side of this engine. I'm probably going to find a massive leak. I'm not real sure that this has two bad injectors right next to each other. It's more likely that it has a high pressure oil leak causing the loss of both injectors. So we're going to open it up, see what we find, and then we will move forward with diagnosis on this truck. If I find massive oil leaks, I will repair the oil leaks, put it back together, and see if the engine runs properly. Unfortunately, it means I got to put it together, take it apart twice if there is a bad injector, but more than likely, we're gonna look for the positive, and hopefully we just have an oil leak that's causing our issue. So we got the high pressure oil rail off, and we definitely found ourselves a high pressure oil leak. Now it doesn't happen real often, but sometimes the injector breaks. There's two little bolts. Now the heads of the bolts are MIA. I was able to find the missing bolt shank. The other bolt shank is still in the injector. But yeah, so there's our high pressure oil leak. So number 8 had a massive oil leak, which was causing such a pressure loss that number 6 was also not functioning correctly. This customer actually had all of his injectors replaced 30,000 miles ago. So we are going to replace number 6 and number 8 per the customer's request, put it all back together, and then we will see how she runs from there. It should resolve all of our issues. I'm actually going to replace all the nipple cup seals on this side as well while I have it out. It's a good thing to replace those, as we see a pretty high failure rate from those. I'll check this injector nipple, make sure it's not damaged from this thing floating around on there. So I'll start putting this back together, stick 2 new injectors in it, new nipple cup seals on the high pressure rails, put it back together. So I found the one broken bolt was still in the injector body. The shim was still sitting on top of the injector when I pulled the oil rail out. I was lucky enough to find this guy down in the valley. It was actually just resting down sitting right next to a valve on the oil side, on the top of the cylinder head. I don't think you'll be able to see it. They probably won't focus on it. It's just a little bolt, tiny little thing. Now both heads for these bolts are missing. They are nowhere to be found. But this truck was running when it came in here, so hopefully those found themselves, the heads of those bolts found themselves a nice little resting place, or maybe even ended up down in the oil pan where they will stay for the rest of their lives. So now I'm going to take this high pressure rail, chuck it up in my vise. I'm going to pull out all my nipple cups and then replace those seals. So I've replaced my O-rings. It's just a little O-ring that goes in the pocket. The old O-rings were squared out. They were pretty old. So definitely a good thing that I'm putting new ones in. I decided to put a new injector cup in as well, in this one where that broken injector was, because the old nipple cup had some scoring on it. So I decided to put a new nipple in. The old one, you're not going to be able to see it on here, but there's some scoring on this where that injector was moving around on here. So in order for me to not have any regrets when I put this back together, we're putting all 4 nipple cup seals in, and 1 new nipple that goes in the top of the injector. We're also going to put the number 6 injector in for the customer's request, since we're in here. He doesn't want to put it all together and then have to have me pull it all back apart again, because number 6 has actually been damaged from being run with oil loss. So probably a really good idea. So luckily for me, I have a lot of these parts for these trucks in stock here. So I will torque down these nuts to 100 foot-pounds, lock everything down, and then the rail will get installed back on the engine after I torque the new injectors down into the cylinder head. Sometimes the tabs that hold the electrical connectors onto the FICM break. They get old and they get brittle. I have some dense foam I keep in the shop. I cut pieces of it out so that I can place it between the valve cover and the electrical connectors, and it helps ensure that those connectors stay seated fully into the FICM and don't cause damage down the line. I mean, it's a backyard fix, but hey, if it works, it beats having to repin one of those 30-pin connectors. And I've had pretty good success with it, so it's a neat little trick to help keep your FICM from burning the pins out of it. I need my FICM. This truck actually has a bulletproof diesel FICM in it, so it's already got the upgraded FICM. We're going to put it back in here. Make sure our connectors are engaged. And then we'll lock her down. Alright. Oh, you need one of those. Alright, air filter's in, everything else is hooked up. I'm fired up, see how she runs. Test drive. So I'm wrapping up this F450 with the 6-liter diesel. We replaced injectors number 6 and number 8. Number 8 injector was sheared off. The head was sheared from the body of the injector. That's a rare occurrence. I've personally never seen that before in 8 years of working on these trucks. I'm going to fire this thing up, let you see where the injectors balance now that the number 6 and number 8 are functioning properly. The rest of my injectors are functioning okay. A couple of them are a little bit low, but with the mileage that these injectors are supposed to have, we're not going to worry about that right now. They should still function fine for a while. They're not far enough out of spec to cause a code or cause a loss of power. So as you can see on the power balance on the IDS, my balance is much cleaner. All my injectors are contributing now. Number 7's a little low, number 5's a little low. When this thing's cold, they're worse than what they show on there now. Normally, with 8 good injectors, this line will go straight across with very little deviation. off idle, when you just start taking off with burned up injectors, the scales will go all over the place. Well, I made headway on this 04 F450. It came into us with a no start hot. That ended up being a broken injector, dumping high side oil pressure when it was shut down. While it runs much better, it's not running quite right. I just drove it about 10 miles. It has it runs good, but it seems like it either has an exhaust leak before the turbo or possibly something else going on, because it doesn't sound the way it should sound when it's running under load. Also, when this thing idles hot, my low oil pressure drops out. Now, if my low oil pressure really was dropping out, the truck would shut down and it wouldn't run, because the low oil pressure feeds your high oil pressure. So if you actually have low oil pressure in your engine, the truck isn't going to run. So now I got to figure out where my oil loss is on my low oil pressure system. And more than likely it's going to be a seal in the high oil pressure system. I will probably end up pulling the passenger side oil rail apart and figuring out what's going on over there. It may or may not need an H-pop, but they'll have to figure out what the actual cause is of the low oil pressure sensor. So that's our next step on bringing this truck back to being reliable. We tidied up quite a few little small things. I had mentioned about the noise under the hood when accelerating. It's a very loud noise, like an exhaust leak or a boost leak. Well, it turned out to be a boost leak. The hot side silicone elbow that connects the turbo to the hot side boost tube that goes to the charge air cooler was ruptured. It was probably over tightened a time or two, and it just blew itself out. So that was a very simple fix. We put new clamps, a new elbow on it, put it back together. The abnormal noise under the hood is now gone. So after this vehicle was warm, the engine oil pressure on the dash would drop down to 0, and the check gauges light would come on because of low oil pressure. Now we know we have oil pressure because if we didn't have oil pressure, the truck wouldn't be running. So there's oil pressure, but not enough to set the gauge. That problem was resolved with an oil change, so more than likely the engine oil in the vehicle was diluted with fuel from a broken fuel injector. It's possible, I don't know for sure, but I changed the engine oil and that problem went away. A couple small points to touch on. The 6-liter diesel has to have really good batteries under the hood. If you have weak batteries, these things can be hateful. They can have all sorts of hard start issues. They can have all sorts of different problems with them running correctly. So good batteries are a must under the hood of these trucks. When it comes down to replacing a starter in one of your 6-liter trucks, by all means choose the Motorcraft unit over an aftermarket unit. It will give you better service over the course of the life of the vehicle, which is worth the money, the small amount of money that it costs more for the Motorcraft unit. So with that, it's time to release this truck to its customer. They're going to go out and haul a bunch of stuff with it. If they have any issues, they'll let us know, but I think this truck's ready for the road ahead.